$100 million guaranteed, the most ever to a defensive player, $50 million guaranteed at signing. The Chris Jones deal was $60 million total, $20 guaranteed at signing. And so it got us thinking about, what is Nick Bosa's contract going to look like? So I actually kind of have a prediction. 2 years from now, based on what's happened in the last, basically what will have been the last 6 by the time Bosa's deal is ready to be made. So 4 years ago, Von Miller got $70 million guaranteed.
He had just won the Super Bowl MVP.
2 years later, Aaron Donald.
Super Bowl MVP.
Super Bowl MVP.
Like, that was a pretty.
$70 million. 2 years later, Aaron Donald got $87 million guaranteed, so 17 more. And now 2 years after that, Myles Garrett got $100 million guaranteed, 13 million more. Now the question is, the NFL cap has been going up by about $10 million a year, right?
And Khalil got paid right after Aaron Donald, remember? Like, got 3 million.
And he got 90. So we could go 10. So, maybe the cap doesn't, maybe this year affects if there's not attendance, and maybe there's a little less money there, but I think the TV money will be just as big. If Nick Bosa stays on this pace, I think we're looking at a minimum $110 million guaranteed, John.
Honestly, that feels low, a little guy.
Minimum, right? I think
on the pace. Because you'd say his pace would be Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, his pace. If he stays on the pace, he'll have more sacks. Myles Garrett has 30.5 sacks through 3 years. So I think this is the baseline is 110, and I think it's probably, what do you think? Closer to 115 or 117 or what?
Well,
again, the cap has to keep going up the way it has been, which is a bit of a question.
Someone texted me today that covers the league, because they're like, I saw something you guys said about George Kittle, and it kind of makes sense because, remember, they were sniffing around Austin Hooper. They had talked about Evan Ingram, trading for him. Like, just like any good franchise, anything's on the table at all times. And I'm like, yeah, I still confident they're going to pay Kittle, but the salary cap might come down a little bit. It could get a little complicated. And he's like, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen because the TV deals are up within a year. He's like, they could double from like Bezos or Apple TV. Like, it's going to be pretty easy for them. Unlike baseball or basketball, that some of their numbers haven't been that strong. The NFL is coming from an all-time position of leverage. So it wouldn't shock me if it just keeps going up as normal, if not grows faster. Von Miller was drafted 2 overall and kicked the shit out of everyone for basically 5 years, and then won the Super Bowl MVP and capped it off and got that money. Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack came into the league, Defensive Player of the Year. You'd say were immediately, by the end of their second year, like 2 of the best non-quarterbacks in the league, not arguable. On the Rams were making the playoffs, right, when McVay shows up, and the fucking Mack, the Raiders, who were terrible for 15 years, was not just the best player it felt like they had drafted since like Charles Woodson, and probably one of the best players they'd ever drafted immediately since like the 70 heyday of all the Hall of Famers. Won the Defensive Player of the Year, took a terrible defense and basically kind of led them to the playoffs. Remember the one game against the Broncos where he won it himself, had like the 5 sacks? It was like, I've never seen anything like this. So their numbers, like, they had
in a half, right? Was it in a half? No.
Yeah, might have been.
Sounds insane when I say it out loud.
It might have been like 3 sacks in the fourth quarter. It was outrageous. I mean, he was picking up the guy, throwing him into Osweiler. I thought Myles Garrett, again, been good. Now, full disclosure, haven't been watching every Browns game. I mean, they've been pretty terrible. I do think he's underachieved a little, just because I heard Daniel Jeremiah. I was in the car driving to my mom's house yesterday, and he was on with Gottlieb, and he said, I don't think he's the best player, but I think he's easily the most talented defensive lineman in the league. Like, he's taller than Khalil Mack. He's a lot taller than Von Miller, and he can bend like that. He's a freak. And he hasn't really lived up to the hype, but I would say he's been really good, but he hasn't been great. Where you'd say Von Miller, Aaron Donald, and Khalil Mack were great. So it was just like a Julio Jones or like a George Kittle. Like, it was like no one was arguing it. Well, you'd say Myles Garrett got, that's a lot of respect for a guy that you'd say, hasn't been the Defensive Player of the Year. Now, no one would argue it. Can he become the Defensive Player of the Year? Nick Bosa's rookie year was better than Myles Garrett's rookie year, was better than Khalil Mack's rookie year. He was the no-brainer Defensive Player of the Year. You could argue one of the best defensive players in the league last year. I think
argue.
That is the argument.
Yeah.
You could also say he was the 49ers' best player in 3 playoff games. He was their best player. If you just put all 3 games together. I mean, I talked to guys on the Chiefs. They're like, it was fucking stupid when we rewatched the tape. Like how he was kicking their ass. They couldn't. And they have Mitchell Schwartz, Jeff's brother, who's one of the best right tackles, not the best right tackle in the league, and Eric Fisher, who, is just a solid
Mitchell
tackle.
just
Like,
got
they have
paid.
good. Yeah, they got good players. So I'd say it would be, I don't want to say an underachievement because it's hard to win the Defensive Player of the Year, but I'd say we're expecting a Defensive Player of the Year type season in one of the next 2 years. And if he does that, you'd say, well, he'd go, well, I'm way better than Myles Garrett, right? Because he had 9 sacks last year, right? Or is it 10? Don't you think he could have like back-to-back 15 type?
He had 10
like
last year. He had 13 and a half the year. His second year, he had 13 and a half.
No, I'm talking Nick.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 9.
Right. So if Nick goes, I think he could have like 30 sacks the next 2 years. So all of a sudden he's at way more sacks than him, and he's good against the run, and he's their team's really good. Is it crazy to think like $125 million or something like that?
No, I don't think it's crazy.
Because if you look, Aaron Donald and Khalil from Vaughn, 2 years removed, right, were almost, Khalil was $20 million more.
Yeah.
And clearly Aaron Donald, like when you look at the tackles, Buckner, Jones, the market is proving like you're not that.
Part of
Like,
this
he's
depends,
the outlier defensive tackle.
like who's getting paid between now and then.
I don't think there are that many guys.
So, yeah, I'd probably put it at like 117.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't think you're crazy to think if he's like defensive player of the year good that we are talking about 125 in 2 years. I don't think it's crazy.
Well, his defensive player of the year comes year 3, right? Like he just has another really good season next year, Pro Bowler, 12, 13 sacks. You're like, well, he's clearly one of the Niners' best players. Every team in the league's like Nick Bosa.
Defense is really good again. They're really good again.
His 3rd year, he becomes like what Khalil did as defensive player of the year. Like he just all around takes over the league.
Yeah.
I'd say he'd be like, well, time to get paid. Now, if he just goes solid, at minimum, he's just getting a little bump from Myles Garrett's
I think
number, right?
solid.
105.
Yeah, you know what? You've changed my mind a little from if he just keeps this up. If he keeps the progression up, then it's different. If he just does what he did for 2 more years and it's just 10 sacks, even that is going to be a 110 contract.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
One thing's already clear after just watching the season, and then even after watching the playoff run, he's really fucking good. Like, it's not like, oh, it could just be an anomaly year. It's just one of those outlier years. No, it's just like, yeah, this guy, I was too harsh on him for whatever reason. Maybe just because I'm like, no way. The Bosa brothers, he's equally as good, if not better than his brother. He was. And when you start looking at his lineage, you go, well, his brother's elite. He was a blue chipper, went to Ohio State. He was the lock, like everyone talked about him before Kyler Murray is the lock #1 overall pick. The Niners got credit, like they no-brainer took him. Then he lives up to the hype. Like this is what it looks like, right? Blue chipper high school, blue chipper Ohio State, brother blue chipper, gets drafted 2 overall when should have gone 1, but there happened to be a quarterback. Even remember Steve Keim was like, listen, trading Josh Rosen to get Kyler Murray when we passed on Nick Bosa was not easy for us to do. So like the league thinks he's a blue chipper, then he dominates.
Yeah.
It's kind of what the progression looks like, right? It's more like a basketball type progression.
And I would say, too, we probably, as people who watched every snap that he played, should know that summarizing Bosa on a sack number does not capture the story. And maybe a Browns fan would say the same thing. I don't know, but I think we can say with confidence that Bosa.
I think they would, and I think the Khalil had a lot.
That's what most
going
great players do, right?
Yeah.
That you don't just capture them in the numbers, but.
Well, because you can be the best player in the league and have 12 or 13 sacks, right?
Yeah.
You'd be like, well, I get double teamed every single snap. They can't run it to my side. Like that was Khalil's thing. Yeah, might never have 20 sacks, but well, you can never run it at me. And if you, for 1 second, put a tight end on me or have your tackle not be focused, it's over. There is something powerful, and you see why the Chiefs. Someone DM'd me the other day, like, are the Chiefs the new Rams? Where do they get all this unlimited money? I'm like, well, that's Mahomes' cap number this year didn't change. Like, so they could front load Chris Jones' deal. That's where Mahomes did them a little bit of a solid. This is where it does help to be on the same page as your guy and it kind of have it be a team effort. Like Chris Jones gets done because of the way Patrick Mahomes was willing to do a deal.
Yeah.